All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's now listen to the plenary discussion, including the Director of the Cybersecurity Department from the Ministry of National Defense, Mr. Dominik Rozdziałowski, Deputy Commander of the Component of Cyberspace Protection, Dariusz Chmielecki, Professor Aleksander Berski of the AGH University in Krakow, Professor Andrzej Dragan from the Warsaw University, Dr. Piotr Bilski from the Warsaw University of Technology, and the moderator will be Professor Aleksander Berski. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Over to the speakers. Great to have you here, dear speakers and dear audience. You've already been introduced, so let's start without further ado. We have 4 topics to cover, but we only have until 10:30, I believe. So let's start. The first topic will be ethical aspects of data analysis and national cybersecurity. So we've got lots of input data in the AI models, but not all data can be taken just like that, because they can end up revealing certain personal information, who we are, what we are, and what we do. So I can watch an auction or look for a washing machine, and then it gets stored in your cookies, and you get washing machine ads all the time whenever you go online. Well, it's not necessarily an attack on our privacy, but still. Let's start with a few words about this aspect from General Karol Mollenda. He's absent, so let me take this question. My commander had to is away on some other important business. So for starters, thank you very much for inviting me here. The topic you mentioned is indeed very hot for many reasons. Many of us working in the realm of cybersecurity are aware that tech behemoths ensure assure us about using data anonymization, but looking at some technologies, we cannot help but think that it's not really working, or they won't just talk about it. So the data transparency, especially in cybersecurity, for key security institutions has to be ensured. We are very cautious about the way we source the data, predominantly or exclusively from the official systems. But at our command, we have it easier in that we know that all data we get are official data we can get in our units, and it is supported by the right documents, rules, and regulations, showing how the system organizer protects the data and what the responsibility is in data processing. So that's the first thing. But on to the main topic, which is the data used by AI, and where the data is really indispensable for machine learning. I don't know whether it is debatable at all, but what with the political correctness, especially in the Western world, although we've got lots of opportunities out there, libraries, equipment, and so on, we are still losing the war because of our political correctness when it comes to data access. Let me give you an example. I'm sure many of you know it. If you look at the AI development strategy in China or Russia, I know that I'm giving you very controversial examples. Still, you'll notice that anything goes for them. So the state can get access to data, and does. And whatever the data security oversight systems show in China is giving you goosebumps. It's really scary. If we talk about futuristic visions, I'd say 1984 is one of the visions we tend to have at the back of our heads. And in some totalitarian regimes, or in some regimes where the authorities try to create the society, abuse is perfectly possible. Let's use the example of AI in China, which can assess the correctness of behavior of the citizens. Is already happening. Imagine all of a sudden being banned from public service because you have too many traffic tickets, or because your behavior is not fully in line with the vision of the government. So it is a threat. From the merely philosophical perspective, to me, AI is an automation tool. In the military, when we develop technologies, AI is an interesting tool for automation of major data streams because we use it for targeting and recognition as it is. It's a very interesting area to grow in from the scientific and technological perspective. So to my mind, the ethics should be key in what we do with AI and in the way we source the cybersecurity data. But please bear in mind that we have to give away some privacy on the way to make all the mechanisms effective. Thank you. You mentioned China, and it made me think about Janusz Seidel. I believe you're familiar with him and his books. And like you said, it's already happening. Professor, from the point of view of science, physics, and quantum information, what would you say? Well, let me first dwell upon what we had so far. You mentioned that maybe someday it's for us or for our children, and so far it's just a tool. So let me start with quoting Hinton. A few days ago, he wrote that there are companies out there who want to increase the capability of what they do in a matter of 18 months. It means that some months ago, ChatGPT 3 was at the level of a 3-year-old when it comes to problem solving. And then ChatGPT 4 came several months later, and with better training data, it can solve any problem a smart 8-year-old can solve. And sometimes it can even tackle logical problems which might be problems for adults. So it jumped from a level of a 3-year-old and to the level of an 8-year-old. Hinton says that in a matter of the oncoming 18 months, it will be multiplied by 100. ChatGPT is like 1/100th of your brain. So if you multiply it by 100, its structure will be comparable to the structure of a human brain. And well, Nature this past July claimed that 1% could pass Turing tests. So if it's continues that way, it won't be, I think, for our children, it will be a matter of the next 18 months. Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, claims that he only tackles two things now, two areas: how to build superintelligence and how to build computing power, allowing us to make it happen. So this is the only thing he does. So he says. And he also mentioned the energy we need for all that is too big. Well, it's true. On the 21st of September this year, Microsoft put out an ad for nuclear physicists. So if you're interested, it's a great time to get hired by them online. So the plan is that the computing centers for machine learning of Microsoft should run on private nuclear power plants. So they need nuclear physicists for that. So we'll find the energy. The cost of training such a network is estimated at $1 billion. But bear in mind that OpenAI, you never heard about 3 years ago, is now priced at the level of $100 billion. So it's just a fraction of what they can do. So maybe in some time, we or our children, well, Jan LeCun, the head of Meta, some 18 months ago said that the language barrier will prevent problem solving in real-life physics. Like, for instance, if you put the telephone on the table, it will move with the table, and no model is able to do it. And 3 months later, ChatGPT 3, which is now a thing of the past, did change the situation. So, if you say never, it means that you lack imagination. Also, the development of the power of the networks we are creating for the past 70 years was not even exponential, it was double exponential. There are no such fast-growing processes in nature. It's like in a chain reaction. Well, this is the right comparison. It means that if we have something now, like for instance, Mid-Journey showing 7 fingers instead of 5, well, it's true, it's just a tool. But what we have now makes no difference for what we'll have in 3 months. So it makes no sense to forecast the future based on what we have now. We have to factor in the growth pace, which is totally unprecedented. So if we keep it like that, according to my estimates, it's in 5 years, we'll have AGI, this strong AI. But Sam Altman and Hinton say it will happen in a matter of several months. So this is something to bear in mind.
Now we can see that we have very concrete tools that help us facilitate certain processes. So it's hard to imagine what comes in several months. And I really expect something more from the experts that are to deal with artificial intelligence in our future. And of course, for years, we have been working on quantum computer. Right now, we don't have it. The computer that we call quantum computer is just a toy that has a very large drawback. So the noise is too high, so in order to omit errors. These are very small toys that can be used for some fun things, but we cannot use it. We cannot use them to serious applications. So we still need time to develop better quantum computers to scale up the activities. But what we have now, we have the infrastructure that can deal with quantum computing. So the success of the neural networks that we have right now is not thanks to revolutionary algorithms. We have certain improvements when it comes to algorithms, but the best success is scaling up. So ChatGPT 3 and 4 is just differentiated by the scale. So when we can feed more information to our models and to our tools, then they already get improved. So based on what is going on right now, the approach of our experts is inadequate. Thank you very much. I agree with what you have said, provided that we have sufficient amount of data. Yes. So the ceiling, the obstacle can be the amount of data. Data is finished. So this is one factor that is very important. But about 6 years ago, we had first algorithms that effectively learned without any data. And the first algorithm to show that spectacularly was AlphaZero. It was an algorithm that played chess without any input data. So the concept was to only teach the algorithm how the chess move around the chessboard, and then it learned itself how to play chess, and after 2 hours of individual learning, it beat the world champion of chess without any input data. So we are already able to create neural networks that play games without any input data. These are logical games. It just needs computing power. So I think it's just a matter of time when such models are applied to more complex systems where the rules of games are not that close and finished like in chess or poker. So I don't think there will be limitations in the future. Of course, the neural networks right now are limited by the quality of data, but we can see there are already examples of technology that allows such technology, such algorithms to be improved without input data. And it's just a matter of time until we can see such applications in large games in real life. Thank you very much. I don't know if you have heard about the Dictator film. I think it was filmed in South America, and it's about a company that made artificial intelligence its CEO. For sure, it's cheaper. Yes, Mr. Dominik Rozdziałowski. Ladies and gentlemen, I really would like to see any world armed forces that watches ethics during any conflict. We can see it in Ukraine. And I'm not speaking about only one side of the war. War is war. The military men are trained for war, and during war there is no ethics. I'm sorry, but that is the reality. If we have, for example, HIMARS stuck in a primary school, for sure the adversary will bomb that school. So there is no ethics. So when we become dominated by our adversaries, then we will be forced to leave ethics aside. And I believe that the army, the armed forces, is the place where at the training level and the theoretical level we should consider that very strongly. Of course, I am not advocating for breaking the law. No, quite the contrary. I'm really for very strict following ethical rules and legal regulations during war and during peace. But the reality is that during the war we have to react very quickly, ad hoc, and the only thing that matters then is to win, is to survive. So I don't really want any more conflicts to emerge, but I really would like to see armed forces that follow ethical rules. And I believe that armed forces is a place where we should be very sensitive about ethics and artificial intelligence, because we will use artificial intelligence for the purposes of fighting and combating our opponent. What General Chmielewski said, well, we are on first name terms, so I would say Mariusz said something about China. So once I sat in one room with the head of the criminal office in China, and I asked him about their retention data, and he asked me, what is retention data? Well, you know, in Poland the telecommunication data are stored only for 1 year. And he said, no, all our servers are connected to banks, operators and everything, and they are downloading everything every night. I asked, how come? He said, yeah, all the accounts, everything that is there in the public companies, state-owned companies, private companies is stored and are downloaded by us. And for how long are you storing the data? Well, we are storing it forever, he said. So this data will for sure be applied to artificial intelligence for training artificial intelligence, and unfortunately they will never care about ethics. So we should also give our good scientists that are good people, also give them opportunity to also use more opportunities to develop their potential, to develop our potential in artificial intelligence field, so that our future systems will be able to defend ourselves, to defend us. That's very interesting. We talked about games because armed forces use games for practicing, and the military University of Technology uses reinforcement learning for such games. So generating data based on simulations or simulation models is a very interesting element of this development that in many aspects has its application in the armed forces, because it's true that we are always preparing for a war of the past. Unfortunately, Einstein was right when he said that he does not know what we will use in the Third World War and even during the Fourth World War. Because these wars are to come. So the combat form that is introduced in NATO, especially the modern platforms that are called very nicely network-centric platforms. These are flying, not even computers, but flying server rooms. They are trained, they are automated, they are pursuing automation as much as they can, so that the pilot can only focus on effective combat. So these type of tools that give the operator the space to focus on combat and not on other technical aspects is a very common phenomenon in the armed forces. Of course, the market shows us what the needs there are, but in building artificial intelligence, the armed forces looks at what technology offers us today, but there are always some restrictions. So we very often say that sky's the limit, but here operator will always, in the armed forces, always be the final entity that will take a decision based on the data that is given to him by artificial intelligence. On the 30th of September this year, NATO said that they developed already an algorithm that bet that one with a human being in drone races. Of course, the fighters will be the next platforms to take part in such competitions. So whenever someone says that always operators, human operators, will be the final entities to take decisions, I always say that, well, you're wrong. You're just lacking imagination. So please avoid using the word always. For sure, it's worth clarifying the word always here. Control can be pursued by algorithms. And I believe that controlling, steering, drone, any autonomous vehicle can be controlled by artificial intelligence. But from the legal perspective, this is the dilemma that we can see in autonomous cars. When there is an accident, who is to blame? In armed forces, we have huge risks of hurting humans, of disasters. We have to have someone who will be held accountable for that. So, okay, let's have a drone which is controlled by artificial intelligence up to the moment of its route, of its identification of targets, etc. But the trigger has to be pulled by the person. Yes, and do you think that Chinese will also follow this rule? I hope so. The fact that you hope so doesn't mean that they will follow the rules that are obvious for us here in Europe. Have you heard the quote of Bill Gates about memory? That computer will never need more computing power than for 64 kilobytes. This is what Bill Gates said. When it comes to ethical aspects, privacy, it's very difficult to have it in mind with the use of today's tools. And the future of searching the data shows us that we will have to forget about that. But this ethical aspect is something that should differentiate ourselves, us who want to be on the good side, who want to be the good guys, from the countries that are closer to realizing the vision of 1984. Of course, we know that technology can do more and more and will improve in this aspect, but how we use it is another thing, because we can also use it differently with regard to our own citizens and differently in applications against our opponents. So when it comes to military operations, I think that theoretically everything goes, because either we survive or the opponent survives. And if the bad guy wins, if our adversary wins, then it doesn't matter what our ethical approach was, because then we cease to exist. But when it comes to caring for well-being of our own citizens, of their privacy, etc., then I would really refrain from certain actions if it's possible. Not because the machine cannot do that, because it will be able to do that, but because I don't want to use that. So we should differentiate because those two things. But actually, it's not a question about the possibilities of artificial intelligence, but it's a question about legal and procedural aspects and these limitations that we impose on ourselves. One more comment. You mentioned data generated by a simulation game. So artificial intelligence generates data so that another AI model can learn on that. So there is research that already shows that this learning in the loop leads to fast degeneration and deterioration of the quality of this artificial intelligence. And this shows us that there is certain ceiling. So the quality of data will not be enough in such closed loops for development of artificial intelligence. So I think we will have to search for alpha zero wish solutions. By auto simulation, it played with itself and then it improved its algorithms. And without such solutions, large data sets will become useless for us. So actually, this competitive edge of China and it's having large, really big data sets will also be finished one day. It would also be exhausted one day. So there are always some limitations. Thank you very much. It's for sure data is necessary for us, and what was said by professor, that there is ideology that we have to follow. We are all raised up. We are all raised in certain ideologies by our parents. I try to follow my parents' ideology, but we have a certain particular things and process, for example, tax optimization. And for example, here we can see on this example that sometimes we will lose no matter what we do. I'm also talking here about China. We don't have much time yet, but I wanted to ask you about this, about creativity. Because, you know, about creativity, for me, these works of art, so to say, that I presented to you are enough, because I am not an artist, and I would never be able to draw something like that. But for artists, it will not be enough. But most of you probably know Harry Potter stories. For 10 years, J.K. Rowling wrote stories, and one of the cornerstones of it was the idea of Horcruxes. I will not dwell on that, but the first Horcrux is put there in the first volume, and it's only explained 6 or 7 years later in the 6th or 7th volume of the story. So for artificial intelligence to create such a concept that something is introduced in the first volume and only in the 6th or 7th volume it's explained, I think, well, such artificial intelligence would have to read thousands or millions of such similar stories. So I hope that not in everything artificial intelligence will be able to replace us and substitute us. So we are running out of time, so maybe one more quick comment. So a lot of times we heard now that everything goes in war. That's not true. There is war law, and we have to follow ethical rules, because otherwise there's chaos. We can all see what is going on in Gaza Strip, let alone Ukraine. So at the beginning of this year, I had the pleasure to meet remotely a team that is building a system Delta, called Delta in the army. This is a team of programmers, developers, but these are people who are dealing with algorithms of AI. And we can see that whenever we have no other choice and we all try to contribute to building certain systems, but we cannot succeed, then we can resort to artificial intelligence. We are talking about the perception of the combat system, for example, or the concept of the state at war. And I will only tell you that Ukraine was successful in combining a lot of video streams with citizens running around the country and filming the movements of the armed forces, and put it in one pool of data in order to identify the forces of the friend and foe, and to then to automate it.
And to me, this is the very idea where the artificial intelligence, without the striking systems as yet, can be of great use, which is solving the problem of the fog of war and opening to the other side with developed algorithms to identify, recognize, and deconflict whatever happens in the battlefield. This is a great help, and reconnaissance is the aspect with great future for automation, to say nothing about UAVs and what they do now. Because, well, let's face it, if now in Ukraine the count of destroyed small UAVs is at the level of several thousands a week, then a long time ago we crossed the threshold of using UAVs ubiquitously. Now it's enough to efficiently connect the data streams and video streams to identify what's going on out there. Thank you. Well, about the data and what you said, Professor Dragan, apart from being a great physicist, is also a great photographer, a great artist. I put some prompts in Google and I asked about the Dragan's effect, and it told me that it is photography processing made up by Professor Andrzej Dragan, followed by some unclear explanations about working with light and stuff. Over to you, Professor. Well, the level of hallucinations we are facing is reducing a great deal. Speaking of what Google told you. Let me leave you with certain take-home messages, which can be interesting to discuss. Let me dispel some superstitions for you. Large neural networks are not a Chinese box. They have a certain model of reality. They are not just, they don't just have a database which they can compare with the training data. They use training data for creating a certain reality model. Even if it's wrong, the data are not directly remembered. Their output is not a compilation of what they saw. They create something from scratch based on the reality model they created. And already now we can see some signs of creative genius in the model, just like the famous move 37 in the game of Go, the so-called God move from 2016, while completely against all the rules known to man. It shows that in simple strategic games, models trained on old data can create something humans could never came up with. So they learn creativity. The pace of growth is, like I said, double exponential. We don't know whether there might be certain barriers on the way, just like, for instance, the quality of data created by other algorithms. But in the absence of those, in a matter of a few years, we should expect the AI level at the level of human intelligence, or going beyond that in a matter of 5 years, or shorter than that, as the wise people say. So then we should expect something that will be able to compete with us in any sense. Last but not least, I cannot see any way to stop this development, because you might say, what if? But we are going forward as best we can, but we have to bear in mind that the algorithms we are creating are based on the principle we don't understand. I cannot stress it enough. We understand the training algorithms a great deal, but we don't know how this trained algorithm works and what's the principle of it working. We can only hypothesize about it, and we should bear that in mind. We set certain objectives, we check whether they are attained, by the ready-made trained algorithm does things in ways we cannot comprehend. Thank you. Now, there's great focus on explainable artificial intelligence. Sadly, it's not a financial focus. Like, for instance, OpenAI gives 10 million on the research, but this is peanuts as compared to what others shell out for development. Well, we heard about closing the topic and shifting the money to XAI. Well, over to you, Professor, now. Well, like we heard, it's all growing so fast, and on the other hand, we do hope that law will curb that with ethics on mind. But I wouldn't bet on that. Well, it's self-explanatory that we have to use some ethics and legal protection for that, but we are struggling to keep up with the development. We do hope that whatever we learned in our lives will be our protection, internal protection. Otherwise, we are struggling to keep up. Just a few words. Well, the AI is everywhere, but the use of it can be broken down into the invasive, non-invasive, or potentially offensive one. In terms of operations like data, search, localization, and pattern recognition, it's not that much of a problem. But what we do with that all is a different problem, and we should focus on that in order not to hurt anybody. Because we are facing an automat that does things in ways we cannot understand, but we cannot really understand how humans work either, so I wouldn't worry about it, because we just do not understand, and we are not beating ourselves up about it. But we have to be cautious not to hurt ourselves or anybody else using AI. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for this debate. I think it was indeed disruptive, but it's better that way. It's better to be a conscious optimist than otherwise. Thank you. Thank you very much, gentlemen.